I did a stretching talk earlier in the summer, but Lena asked if I maybe do one that would be a little more specific or hook men in. And really, there are small changes that I made to it. I put in a couple shoulder things. A lot of times I don't know how our shoulders are doing now, but
They hurt.
shoulders, yeah, tight and get hurt. But really, any of these stretches are good for anyone. In my experience, if you're mid-20s and older and you're not stretching, you're tight. Men are tight. They get tight without stretching. So you have to actively work at it to increase your flexibility. So I'm going to go through some of these kind of, the name of the other talk I did was easy win stretches. So think of these as easy win stretches with a little slant towards men. Calf stretch. If we're standing or sitting all day, our calves are going to be tight. Sometimes we have leg cramps at night. Okay, I've told the story in the other one about I got called a genius because a woman, one of our members, she's an older lady, I was just talking to her and came up that she wasn't sleeping well at night. Her calves were cramping up. She'd wake up in the middle of the night with these terrible cramps in her calves. And I said, well, do you stretch your calves? And she looked at me funny. And I took that as a no. And I showed her how to do calf stretches. Week and a half later, she sees me, calls me a genius. No more leg cramps at night. She's sleeping through the night. And it's so easy to do. In the fitness center, we have an adjustable slant board, so you can adjust the angle that we're going to have our feet at. But what we need to do here is kind of drop our heels down, and so our toes are above our heels. And we can do that if, let's imagine this is maybe a little sturdier book. If you have a block, the bottom of a stair, I'll come over here. If we can get so the heel gets down a little bit and the toes are up, and we're going to step forward until we feel a stretch in our calf. And we stop and hold. I have down there, with most of these stretches, I have this kind of warning on here. You're going to stretch until you feel tension, but not sharp pain. So when you're stretching, you want to feel the pull, feel sharp pain, you got to back off that stretch a little bit. You hold it for about a minute. I don't even count anymore, I just go by feel. Could be 30 seconds, could be a minute. If you're timing it, just try to do a minute if you can, where you're feeling a pull in there. Over here, the knees are bent slightly forward. And you're going to bend your knees forward and just very subtly kind of move your hips forward. And by bending those knees and moving your hips forward, we're going to move that stretch from the calf muscle a little bit lower into the Achilles tendon. And so that one, both of these are great for the plantar fasciitis that we're talking about, but the Achilles tendon one is going to be a real crucial one for those of us that have plantar fasciitis. So same setup, same stretch, except we move our knees in and slightly move our hips forward. Now, if you don't have a slant board or a brick or a dictionary, old dictionary, you can, the old one like this, where you go up against the wall and you keep your heel down and come forward. That may be enough to give you, if you're really tight, that'll give you a stretch in your calf. And then you can slightly bend that knee, move your hips forward, and now I feel it move down a little lower into that Achilles tendon. So, quick, easy win stretch. Remember, I got called a genius for this. Again, I didn't make this stretch up. I just passed the information along. So, any questions on this one? You can do it at your desk too. Just stand up right behind your desk. Hunt around the college for an old dictionary or something. Put your foot up on it. You can pretend you're reading your emails. Stretch your calves right behind your chair. Hamstring stretch. Our hamstrings are tight. I don't care who you are. unless you've been in yoga for a while or you're an athlete that's been actively stretching your hamstrings for a long time. Gary, are your hamstrings tight?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So just before you got in, I said if you're 25 years old or older and you're not stretching, you're tight, especially these hamstrings. Now, this is important, believe it or not, for low back tightness. These hamstrings are big, long muscles. Part of them attach below the knee and part of them attach above the hip. When those hamstrings are tight, they're going to pull on everything. So they're pulling above the hip even. All this stuff, your glutes, your hamstrings, are kind of all intertwined in this area in here. And so when one of them's tight, it's going to pull. And you may feel it as lower back tightness. You know, you get that, maybe you've been on your feet for a long time and your back just feels really tight. If your hamstrings are tight, that can be, one of the reasons that you're feeling that in your lower back. So stretch these hamstrings. Now this drawing here, the guy's got it up on a pretty high surface here. Really, you can adjust the height, The example I gave where we step out behind our desk while we're checking our email, you can just turn your chair around and get your leg up on here. And what we're going to do, we're going to kind of pretend we're getting graded on our posture, so we're not going to round our back like this. We're going to think, it's not going to happen, we're going to think about bringing our chest down to our knee. So come forward. I feel a stretch in that hamstring. I just hang out here for a while, maybe a minute. I just let that stretch take hold. And again, this illustration here, the guy's got it up pretty high in the air. You find the level that works for you. We even have little blocks in the fitness center that some of our older members, they'll have it up maybe this high. Works for them. So it's at the level that you need it to be at.
So when you see a football or baseball player go down and they say hamstring, is it just something tightening or is something detaching when that happens?
It's an injury to the soft tissue, so the muscle, or sometimes the ligament and tendon. But yeah, I mean, when you, like a football player, if they're running and they blow out a hamstring, they're putting so much force on that hamstring that maybe they get hit or they get twisted and they get out of the proper alignment just because of the nature of what's going on in the sport, and it goes. So you need to be flexible and strong in that muscle to keep it from blowing out like that. Yeah, Lena.
And that stretch, is your knee bent or straight?
That one, your knee is straight. Yep.
Hey Joel, if someone has started having some lower back pain, mysterious, don't know the origin, is this a good thing to recommend they try in general?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the nature of the pain. It's the big, sharp, shooting pain. I wouldn't necessarily, if I've never stretched before, start doing this. I'd get a diagnosis first. If, this is something, I've had this comes up all the time or various times throughout my life, and I've done some of these stretches before, and you can kind of cautiously go through them. Yeah. I mean, when my lower back gets tight, I do this stretch and I do a couple more that I'm about to go through. And a lot of the time, it relieves it. Tight hips, tight hamstrings, a lot of the time, we feel it as lower back tightness. If you feel shooting pain, there might be an injury to it more than tight muscles. So that's why, you kind of have to use your head on that one. Questions on the hamstring stretch? There are a bunch of ways you can stretch your hamstrings. This is quick and easy. You don't even have to get down on the ground to do it. Hip flexors, especially if we're sitting a lot. Hip flexors are a whole bunch of muscles right in here that flex our hip. So we're bringing, like if we're bringing our knee up, so think when we're sitting down, hold on. When we're sitting down, this is tight right here. We do a lot of sitting, we're getting tight hip flexors. A lot of ways you can stretch it. This one, now it's showing where the front leg is elevated on a step. You can do it on flat ground as well. You're going to take a step forward if I'm stretching my right hip flexor. And now I'm going to roll my hips in subtly. So I'm not like this. I'm going to bring them forward. And then I'm just going to ease the whole thing forward till I feel a tension right here in the front of my hip. And I'm going to hang out here, feel the tension for about 60 seconds. Now, you can experiment with this one. You're going to need to figure out how big of a step you need to take. If you're really tight here, it may be a fairly small stride that you're taking. The width of your stance too, wider stance, you're going to get more of what we call the adductors, or that inside of your groin. The narrower, the more you're going to get right here in front. So you can, I actually do these a couple different widths to get both aspects, the inside and the front of the hip flexor. And so right now I'm feeling, my right hip flexor has been tight lately. I'm feeling it right now. I got a lot of tension in my hip flexor here. So I'm just going to stop and hold it. So you have to play around with your stride length and your stride width till you feel a pull in there. If you're really tight, it's not going to matter. You're going to get a stretch no matter what your distance or width is on your stride. There's also a version of this where you're down on the on your knee, your back, this knee is down on the ground like this, and you're coming forward. But for those of us who don't like to get up and down from the ground, we can do it right here. That's why I showed the standing one. Questions on this one? If you're in a car ride, your hip flexors are going to be tightened up.
The step that he's on, is that important?
No, the step that he's on is just to give a deeper stretch to it. So that's the next option for you if you need a deeper stretch in there. I would start out with just do it on the floor like I was doing. Oh, by the way, like we were just talking about vacation and going out to New York. So if I'm on a trip and I'm in the car, I'm tight. When I get out of that car, the first few steps, you know. So here's a little trick I've been doing. Stop to put gas in the car. Getting back to that calf stretch, the pump is always on a curb. I'll put the ball of my foot up on that curve, come forward, and I'll do a calf stretch while the gas is going, and then I'll do a hip flexor stretch while the gas is going in. It's just something I've been doing probably the last 10 years as I get out of the car on a long trip. But look at it. Next time you put gas in your car, look down. It's always up on like a housing or a little curb. Okay, this one right at your desk. We can do this. This one here for sciatica pain or back tightness, we're going to stretch. There's a muscle called the piriformis muscle. It's kind of a small muscle deep under your glutes by your hip. It connects your hip to your pelvis. We're going to cross our leg over. And if we're tight, we're stretching right now. Some people can only get about here. They're so tight. And what we're going to do is we're going to pretend someone's grading our posture and just sit up nice and straight. And right now I'm feeling a tension within my hip. And I'm just going to hang out here and let it stretch for a minute or so. So we're checking emails. We're stretching our piriformis. Gary or Ron, you've probably seen me doing this in the fitness center. I might be watching people and stretching my piriformis. Now, as you get more flexible with this, again, we're not rounding our shoulder. We got good posture. We're going to, just like I said with the hamstring stretch, we're going to think about bringing our chest down towards our leg. And as we come forward, we get a deeper stretch with that. And usually, we have one side that's tighter than the others with hamstrings and hip flexors and that. And my left feels pretty good right now. My right one was screaming a little bit, so I had to back off a little. Again, this one, I don't even know how many people I've told about this one that have just thanked me for it. And I'm not trying to brag, I'm just saying it's so easy. And it has such a big benefit that I really wish more people would investigate this one. I've had a couple older members that they were in talks with surgeons about maybe a hip replacement, horrible sciatica. Show them this. Things are going so well, they're not going back, didn't go back to the surgeon because something as simple as this could alleviate a lot of discomfort. I'm not saying that it's going to happen with everyone, but this is an easy win right here. It's easy to do. You do it right in your chair. It's provided a lot of relief for people. Questions on this one? All right. Pat, I know we just talked before. Shoulders, whether you have rotator cuff or labrum problems. When we get older, our shoulders go bad. It's just, we use them and they go bad. So we've heard of like frozen shoulder. A lot of times we get some injuries to our shoulder. What we do is we kind of lay off things. We don't really work at strengthening them. We compensate for them. And our range of motion goes down and down. Pretty soon we barely raise our hand over our head. A wall walk has been very successful for a lot of people. You could take your, maybe if I do it at an angle over here, just at an arm's length, at about shoulder height, and you walk your fingers, it's a wall walk, and when you feel tension in stretching, you stop and hold it. And this is very successful for people who have rotator cuff injuries, tightness after a rotator cuff injury. You can do it arm's length sideways for a different type of stretch. Facing, it's the most common one to really get that rotator cuff. You can also take a towel, hand towel, at some point and you're sliding up and down, almost like you're, we always joke, oh, you're cleaning the walls for us, you know. The finger walk up is the kind of the first step of doing this one, to get that shoulder opened up, and you can control that stretch pretty easily by walking that up. You go up, you know, half an inch each time, and you get to the point, you know, if I go up too high, I got sharp pain, so I'm walking it up to where I have tension and not pain, and stop and hold it. And you can do reps of that. You can walk up and walk down. You can do a set of 10 like that, where you're walking up and down the wall with your fingers. Again, there's all sorts of shoulder stretches you can do. I've seen a lot of success with this one, especially with those rotator cuff injuries. And it's an easy win. You're standing up. You don't even have to get down on the ground or do anything crazy or contort yourself. All you need is a wall, and you can do it. And lastly, I put up kind of a little hodgepodge of some other stretches on here that are common. See, the top two are some other shoulder ones, maybe a little more advanced if you don't have a rotator cuff injury. Some seated hamstring stretches, some hip and lower back stretches as well. This bottom one here is kind of a really much more radical hip flexor stretch. But this is on there for your reference. It's taken from this really famous book called Stretching. I don't know who the marketing genius was, but this was written in the 70s when that, you know, the running craze started. and you can see the illustrations. You know, he's got the knit cap and all that. But there's just tons and tons of stretches. If you go look at this book online, Stretching by Bob Anderson, it's got more stretches than you can ever guess, and they're all illustrated like this. It's kind of nice, kind of neat how they have those figures there. So with that, I'm sharing some of the ones that I've seen people have a lot of quick and easy success with. Are there any questions, any other issues, other things you want to ask me about? We got a couple minutes.
For the stretching, Joel, is it the same as like you would do a workout, like you go through a set of stretches, then you
Oh yeah, like would you do?
rest and do another set, or?
Right. So that's a good point. So how do you actually implement this?
Right.
You can try it both ways and see what you like. I kind of like to go through. So in other words, if I'm stretching 3 different areas of my body, I like to do 1, 1, and 1, and then go back through for a second time. Some people, they like to concentrate on one area and really get it stretched out. It's majoring in the minors at that point, if you know what I mean. So you do what you feel is most comfortable for you. I feel like when I go through and I give it a little chance to rest, I can get a better stretch in the next time, but personal preference. You can stretch whenever. It's most effective when your body is warm. Muscles, tendons, ligaments, they're more pliable when they're physically heated up. So if you did some exercise and you went for a walk and then you did some stretches, you could probably stretch a little bit further and get a little bit more developmental stretch in, where you could develop more, flexibility. But you can do them whenever. Now, the best time to stretch is when you remember to do it. So we have the best laid plans, right? That's why I'm saying you're watching TV or you're checking your email, you can stretch your calves, you can do a hip flexor stretch. When you're sitting at your desk, you can do a piriformis stretch. That's how you can kind of implement it into your daily life without saying, okay, well now I got a 30-minute stretching routine I have to go do. You can implement these throughout your day. Any other problem areas? Yeah, Ron, and then we'll go Pat. Yeah.
Go ahead.
A personal testimony, unfortunate experience, maybe I was 55 or so. I never had absorbed the directions to be sure and stretch before you run. And I bolted up some stairs. I started running and actually just going wild, jumping like a kangaroo. But then when my right leg hit the ground on one of those jumps, there was that sharp pain, and I actually heard something sounded like a rifle shot. And it wasn't my Achilles tendon. This is back to that first image of the calf stretches. Is there a secondary tendon that something popped?
Yeah.
So
there's a couple muscles in your calf that make up your calf. So they're different tendons, and you could have ruptured the muscle belly. 55 years old and you're doing an explosive movement like that with no prep, not surprised it happened. Stretching right before you did that may not have prevented that, but if you were stretching, let's say for 6 months leading up to that, and you had greater flexibility in your calf, it might have prevented that. What really would have prevented that is if you would have trained for weeks, gradually increasing the intensity of leaping like a kangaroo up the stairs. So that's a case of having the mind of a 20-year-old and the body of a 55-year-old and going through it. So that's what happens when we get older. We get tight, And our body just can't do what it could do when we were younger without the proper prep involved. You could when you were 20, you could roll out of bed and do what you were just describing.
The shoulder stretch, is that also good for the neck? Because sometimes you sleep wrong and you wake up and, oh, you know how that.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, a lot of times, to be honest, I mean, you could try that. It might work. But a lot of times, when you get what you feel like is neck pain here, it's something back here in your upper back. And so really what I've shown people to do is we have a lacrosse ball. You know what those are like? They're small and hard rubber. We also have what's called a myo ball for myofascial release. It's a blue squishy ball. It's more forgiving than that lacrosse ball. And we'll have them, you pin it against the wall and you move around. What you're doing is you're actually massaging, giving yourself a massage. And you roll around right in here and you massage that area out kind of like by your shoulder blade and underneath it. And a lot of times that neck crank goes away or it's lessened because these muscles back here, these trapezius muscles, they attach, they're all the way down here and they attach up in the neck. So if you got a cramp or something or a spasm down in here, it's pulling on everything and you feel it up here. But a lot of times it's because of, right around in that shoulder blade area. So that's, I've had pretty good success with people with that. Like you said, it slept funny and then, okay, come over here and do this. We roll out, hey, that feels better. What's going on? The body's funny like that.
Yeah.
Something somewhere might affect down the road. The old knee bone's connected to the thigh bone thing. Yeah, well, muscles are connected at different places and affect things. Any other questions?
Do you have any stretches, like as far as if you're working on your grip, let's say, and you get tight in that manner?
Yeah. So we're working on our grip. We're doing this. We're flexing we're using what's called our forearm flexors. Okay? So this gets worked and tight. These are our extensors. These don't get worked and they're not as strong as these because we're doing this all day. So we can stretch. Well, if you look in a textbook, they're going to have you do this. I've actually found better success doing it this way. You can turn a little bit as you need to, and that'll stretch this area here. Okay?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is if you're getting elbow pain, you're stretching, then you're also strengthening this, which would be, reverse curls, wrist curls with the extension part. And then, have you seen me with a big rubber band in the fitness center on the fingers and you expand?
No.
I'll show you next time you're up.
Okay, great.
And that's working on these forearm extensors here to kind of balance out the strength between these two. But when you're working on that grip, it's this right in here. So we got to do something, balance that out on the other side.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for coming. I enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it.